Hello and welcome. So in this section we are going to learn about receive connectors and we will be configuring receive connectors. So in Exchange Server 2007, 2010, what like in 2003 or 7, what you were doing was in order to be able to send and receive emails, you had to create connectors. So receive connector and send connector, these are the two different connectors that allows your organization, your Exchange server, to be able to send and receive emails. So in Exchange Server 2016, now it is quite different. So when you install Exchange Server 2016, you do not need to create any connectors in order to send and receive email inside your organization. So let's get started with Receive Connector and see what are the different options we have available for our receive connector. So when you click on mail flow in this section, you will see an option called receive connectors. And when you click on receive connectors, you can see that there are 5 different connectors already created. And then these are like in two services type. And one is for front end transport and one is for hub transport. So, the front end transport is where, for example, client front end Sacramento Exchange 1, which is enabled. What's the function of this one? Let's just start from the top one and then go one by one with it, and we will see uh, what each connector does and how can we just use them. So the first one that you see in here is called client front end, uh, and then the server name. This one uses the port number 587, and this requires actually it is required for client authentication. So the client front end server name receive connector is required for client authentication if you want to authenticate your client, because whenever your clients wants to receive an email, they needs to be authenticated. So this connector authenticates it and it uses port number 58. And one other good thing is that it uses secure authenticated SMTP. So it uses simple mail transfer protocol SMTP, and the good thing is it is secure and authenticated SMTP, simple mail transfer protocol. So the first receive connector is used for client authentication. All right, so the next one is client proxy and then server name, and this is the service type for transport. It is used to accept like client connection proxied by front end services. So um, it accepts client connections. It accepts clients connections. This one accepts client connection that is proxied by the front end services, and it uses port number 465. It uses port number 465. The third one is default front end and then server name, and this is for front end transport services, and it is used as in like SMTP server, and it uses port number 25, and it is an endpoint entry for email from non-exchange system into the organization. So whenever you receive an email from non-exchange system, a system that is not exchange server, Microsoft Exchange server, like it can be any other type of mail server, and the transportation of that or the receiving of emails from non-Exchange server into your organization is actually controlled or done by default front end and then receive connector. And then the other one is default SAC EJO Exchange 01, and this is hub transport for the hub transport role or service, and this is actually using port number 2525. It is used to accept connection from other transport services on the same or different server. So whenever an email comes from one of your other transport services, or like from any other exchange that you have in your other environments, other sites. So they also have an Exchange server running, and they have a hub transport running, which is doing the transportation of emails. So whenever one hub transport sends an email to another hub transport, that receiving of those kind of emails is done through this default receive connector. And then there is other one called outbound proxy front end receive connector, and it uses port number 717, and it is used if a send connector is configured to proxy outbound email via front end transport. So it is used if a send connector is configured to proxy outbound email via front end transport. So that's what you can do with this outbound proxy front end and then the server name. So when it comes to the configuration, most of the time we do not touch it because they're already configured. But when you click on their properties, you can see that you can just configure different things like maximum receive message size. For example, if someone sends an email from outside or from any other organization, so this is like client proxy. This is specifically for client proxy. Let's work on, for example, this one default front end which is when someone is sending an email from non-exchange server. So what you want to do in here is you want to say, for example, if someone sends an email from non-exchange server, the maximum receive size should be 10 MB. When it if it's more than 10, it should just simply deny it. When you go to security, you can configure like different security parameters. Like for the authentication, it should use TLS, Transport Layer Security, which is a great way of encrypting it's a security layer actually for authentication. So what you can do is you can just enable TLS, and you can also configure basic authentication, integrated Windows authentication, Exchange Server authentication. It all depends on like how you are trying to configure your authentication settings. And then for the permission group, you can see like who is allowed to connect to this receive connector: exchange servers, legacy exchange servers, anonymous users. So if you uncheck anonymous users, what is going to happen is that non-exchange servers will not be able to just send email. So most of the time, if you uncheck this, they will not be able to send email. So these are different settings that you can do in your receive connectors, which is quite simple and easy. So the most of the configurations that you will be requiring to do is like configuring the message size. That's all I think you will be doing. But still, depending on your company's policy and requirements, you can configure more settings for all these five default connectors. So that's it for the receive connector, and I hope you have learned something, and I'll see you in the next video.